We're still recording. If there's any comments, criticisms, complaints, or otherwise, then no, I'm just teasing, but
Good teaching, Dan. It's always relevant if it comes from the Bible, and we were talking about personal growth earlier amongst ourselves. And man, a person that doesn't think that they need to grow, I don't know. But anyways, I got to deal with myself. But some of this is very relevant, and I think it's good to deal with the behavior issues and the truths of, Christ likeness. And, if somebody doesn't teach, I always say the hardcore things that we need to really line ourselves up in behavior or our own personal sinful ways. I know that I've got to work on some stuff, and you got to want to, but I love what you said about you have to really desire change. If you're the person that sees it in yourself and you desire the change and you discipline yourself to go there, then that's great. That's your sanctification. That's your way of repenting from that particular. And so, I learn a lot from the practical teachings to break things down, and put it before us so that we can contemplate this and see, is there any way in me? And I know that there is, and I know what those things are because you have to have integrity facing off with what is it going to take for me to be more Christ-like, to have relationships, to be a person that is reflective of others and not some control freak, and somebody that ditzes other people. You have to be very, um, you have to be, I think, also critical with yourself, and align yourself up with where do I need to grow. And this is really important, Dan. I love what you shared. Thanks for sharing this. Very beneficial.
thanks, Donna. Ray,
Yeah, when you're talking about profanity, um, and I certainly had a mouth at one time in my life, and I'm so glad I've left it pretty much behind. And yet, if I get really, really angry, I'll say a word or two that I don't really want to say. But what comes to my mind was Isaiah. And in Isaiah 6, he actually had a vision of God. And he said to himself, "Woe is me, I am lost. I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." And so then one of the angelic beings comes over and puts a coal from the altar and puts it on his lips in this vision. And now he says, "Your sins are forgiven." And, I really appreciate how what you've pointed out is that this is all a matter of the heart. And so if we see things in our words that are not not a blessing to ourselves or to others, then maybe we need to look at our heart. And as far as one thing I don't have a problem with is that although I have my own strong feelings and opinions and what have you, uh, I I know that there's always two sides of every story. And one thing that's actually very helpful is to have other people around who completely disagree with you, because I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong, well, then I have someone that will help correct me. So the people that we disagree with actually may come in very handy sometimes, and we should appreciate that. So those are a couple of thoughts.
good word, Ray. Rosalind,
Yeah, thank you for this teaching. I think these kind of teachings are really valuable because it's very practical in a way, or how we conduct ourselves. And yeah, I wanted to say some things about, first of all, gossip, and how it's not only divisive, but it creates distrust. And that is really bad in the body of Christ, because even though, yeah, maybe we can't really fully trust people, but we should be able to trust people at some level. And so what I mean by that is, like, um, let's say you struggle with a sin, and you actually should be telling somebody about that, but because people people around you just gossip or something, then you withhold it because you don't feel you can trust the people who are in your church. Or like there was this one church that I am a part of a little bit online. Um, I thought there was so much gossip. I mean, lovely people, but I just felt like there's a whole lot of sharing information about other people's lives, which is not necessary. And one example was a friend of mine in this church. She told me something that somebody else had told her confidentially. And I know that this other person would never have told me this, and probably isn't going around telling a lot of people. But this woman had said to my friend that she regretted marrying her husband, and that she felt it was the biggest mistake of her life. And I thought, well, I thought, but you shouldn't be telling me this. I have, you know, this is this. It's not. I'm not supposed to know this, because if that woman wanted me or other people to know that, she would have gone around and told everyone, right? But it's something very confidential. And I thought it kind of breaks down the trust that you have towards others, because then I think, oh, so my friend shared something so like um intimate about another person with me, and how do I know that she won't just do the same thing with me if I tell her something very confidential and private? You know, she might go around telling lots of people that I wouldn't like them to know that about me, you know? And I think so it causes mistrust, and it sort of turns people's hearts a bit against others, or you maybe judge people more when they speak about other people in ways they shouldn't. Um, and then there was also a Bible verse, um, James 4:1-3, which came to my mind about quarreling. And James writes, "What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you?" And then, yeah, you desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. And I thought, that's exactly it. Because why, when you start to argue with people, it's because you you want to be right. It's your passions, your desire to be right that causes the anger or the argumentative attitude, instead of just saying, okay, we disagree, it's okay, or oh, you think that, okay, then your passions are in the right place, when you can just listen to somebody you disagree with and you're like, oh, okay, and you just let it go. But if you can't let it go and it becomes this big thing, then it's your passions that actually you want to win that person's opinion, or change their opinion, or you want to be right. And I think, I think the best, for me at least, I've found that when my dad raises his voice and gets angry over politics or something, I I just leave the room, and then it it works really well, because then after a little while, um, yeah, we talk together, and then we can talk calmly about things, and not, with lots of feelings. And and then, sorry, I've talked for a long time now. There's one last verse, which is really beautiful, and it's Proverbs 12:18, which says, "There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." And I just find that last part really beautiful, that if we have wisdom, then our words should actually have a healing effect on people. So, yeah, that was what I have to say. Sorry for going on for too long.
Oh, that's good, Rosalind. I appreciate that. I know a lot of times for me, it's my desire to be. So here's the bottom line. I look at, we're all truth seekers. That's why we're in the fellowship we are. We want to know the truth. We wanted to know the truth concerning theology. Truth is really important to all of us, and so so we want to be right, and I think that's a good thing. But we have to allow other people to have different viewpoints, and then to do the best we can to try to resolve those in a peaceful manner. So, Suzanne, you had your hand up.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan. It's great teaching. And Rosalind, what you just said it really just struck me. I really appreciate you sharing that last verse and that point about how the objective should be that our words somehow lead to healing, or to something that's, uplifting or wholesome. And that's very convicting for me, because what I wanted to mention is that Ecclesiastes says that there's a time to speak and a time to refrain from speaking. And I love what you talked about, Dan, because it really, when we talk about the heart, we're talking about motivation. And what I realize is that before I say anything, whether it's verbally or in writing, to think about, what is my motivation? What's my objective? Like you said, am I doing it for pride, to be right? Am I speaking, out of insecurity or fear? Having this sense of like righteousness, godly righteousness, can be really masking pride. Like you're saying, like we're seeking truth. And so we feel like we have a truth. And so we feel like we need to get that truth across. So for me, it's like thinking, like, what is driving this need to say something? Am I being driven to speak up because I want to prove that I'm right about something, or that I'm smarter than somebody else? So I'm going to, like, pound them with theology, like we see sometimes in these Facebook groups where people are trying to, like, prove that they know more about the Bible than somebody else. But what I struggle with, especially in my family situation, is that there's this balance between if I'm quiet and I don't say anything, and I'm trying to push for peace and cooperation, and so what happens is I compromise my integrity. I compromise my what I believe or understand is true, and if I don't speak, I'm condemned. If I do speak, I'm vilified, and I'm so, like, Lee and I are just in that situation with our family that's been so difficult and so painful because of that. If we don't say anything and we're complicit, we feel very convicted by God that we're sinning. But there's almost no way to speak up in love with a loving motive to try to bring words of healing when the stance that we take on a particular issue, for example, is, there in itself is going to cause complete opposition or pain or whatever. So, so my prayer is that, like, we all, before we get too mired into conflict or whatever, to really be asking God to reveal, like, what is the motivation, and is this a time to speak, or is this a time to stay silent? Because a lot of people just opt to just not say anything because they just don't want to start an argument or they don't want to have controversy. But we've also seen a lot of times the result of not speaking up when we should speak up, that God convicts us in that way. So for me, it's just like searching for wisdom and asking God for that wisdom, because I can't see all the different sides. I can't see the future. I can't know someone's heart. So all I can do is ask God, to give me, like, some kind of indication of whether I should talk right now or whether I should just be silent. And then if I do need to speak, how do I word it? If there's no way to word something, that no matter how it's worded, it's going to be taken wrong, or it's going to be seen as a sword, like that verse, like if no matter what I say is going to hurt, then that's just feels like an impossible situation. So God can give us that wisdom, and we just, like I think you said, like, we have to be asking God to search our hearts and to help us to know when to speak and when not to speak. I guess I'm repeating myself.
Well, I think you've made some really good points, because the as what I hear you saying, and what it reminded me of, is we can't be quiet and then become complicit in evil. And yet, on the other hand, just because there is evil doesn't mean every time there is that we are called to speak up. So it takes that wisdom of God, because I know I've been in situations where I've been directed. I know God directed me to speak up in the middle of a large group and to confront the group prophetically. Which, what's that going to do? That's going to stir conflict and cause discord. But just because it causes conflict and discord doesn't mean it's not the will of God too. Because He's calling people back. A word fitly spoken, a word of reproof. God does reprove and correct. So we have to be very careful, because, like I was saying, and as you said, I only see the ball from one perspective, and I have to be humble enough to say, I don't know it all. I don't understand this. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking, but I got to separate my thoughts from God's thoughts, submit to Him, let Him examine them. And now I'm repeating, but yeah, that's really good. Good. Thanks, Suzanne. So Paul, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for that. I think it's a really important topic, and you can be doing so well in other areas that you get that wrong, and you're well off, and you send you into a spiral of shame with reflecting on what you've done there and how that's not normally you and all these things. I know the situation. I've been there, and it definitely happens on occasion, and it's not a good thing. So really important subject. what I was thinking about, Dan, as you were saying this, is something that I've been looking into lately. I mean, I think a lot of people on this call knows how I was called, and I was not a Christian until it's coming up 8 years ago, and I hadn't been in a church since I was pre-teens, and I was certainly not planning to be in a church other than for funerals and weddings, and spending as little time as there as possible. And 8 years ago, I mean, I'd been reading a lot of self-help books about trying to improve how I was in so many different ways because it was helping me at work. I was working a lot with people, and I was finding there was a lot of friction there, especially when you don't have God uh, as your as your center of your focus and trying to serve God. Um, so I was sitting here one day reading another book, and God spoke to me. May have been Jesus. I don't know the difference in the voices, to be honest. Um, but either way, what I was told was that you know that what you're doing there is useless or pointless without service to me. And from that moment, everything changed completely. And in that year, I read the Bible multiple times and listened to audio Bible and all sorts of YouTubes. And but anyway, there's more to that story. But my point was that I had been studying a lot of self-help stuff before that. And what God told me when He called me was that He didn't say that that was no good. He said that it was pointless without service to Him. And I've realized that for years afterwards, I never really thought about that. And I thought, no, it's one or the other. That's for the world. It's not for us as Christians. But you know what? There is work there has been good work done as well with within psychology and so on. You got to be really careful what you're doing within all those things because it's not all from the same motive, and it's trying to find happiness without God at the center of it, which is not right. However, there is one thing that I did learn, which has come in great help recently because I've really been looking into these things and about changing fundamentally. And one of those things is a technique called logical levels, and it's from NLP, it's called. And basically, within psychology, it's proven that what you do is based on your belief, okay? Which shouldn't come to us as a surprise to many of us, But when we think about belief, we think of believing in Jesus and that He died on the cross, that He was raised from the dead and will be raised. But there are many other beliefs that we can have. And we know that that big belief that we've got really motivates us. But there are also other beliefs that we can have, you know. Um, God teaches us through Jesus and through Paul various values. Paul has told us that love is patient, love is, and so on and so forth. These are values and beliefs. And when we go wrong, when we do something that we feel, oh, that I really should not have done that. What's wrong with me? And you kick yourself and you punish yourself. But a lot of the time it's because we are not aligned with those other beliefs that we are being taught, these Christian beliefs. If we believed more in patience, can you imagine how we'd be? If we believe more in treating others as we would like to be treated, could you imagine how we would be? Could you could you imagine how we'd be if we believed a lot more in mercy of others? What if we believed a lot more in saving anyone by whichever means we can, as Paul believed? All these things. So when we get into these situations, it's really important to actually know those Christian sub-beliefs, if you like, and actually seeing how we might be wrong in our belief in that situation. It could be things like pride. It could be things like patience. Wait, if I don't say this now, I'll not do it. Or it could be a lack of mercy where you think, well, wait a minute, what you just said there was right out of order, and I'm going to put you in your place right now. Could be things like that. Whereas God says, leave the punishing to me for the day. Leave these things. So things like that, that's really worth revisiting when we get into these situations and are reflecting on them, because those little beliefs about that we have, they're the wrong little beliefs. We can change those by just realizing that God's beliefs, God's values, they are the right ones. They are perfectly pure, and they're just perfectly pure and righteous. And we can do much worse than adopting those. In fact, we can do very, very well by adopting those when we see that we've got something wrong in what we believe in about those things, and our integrity will tell us when we're not lined up with God's will, and that's when we feel bad. So I just wanted to put that in there. It's something that's really I'm thinking a lot about recently, and it's bringing me some real benefit. So that was it, Dan. Thanks for the teaching. I thought it was very good.
You're welcome. Thanks, Paul. I'm gonna let Steve or Phyllis, I see they have a hand up, and I'll let them speak, and then I'm gonna stop the recording, and then we'll close. But good comments, you guys. I know it's been, I put it together because it was convicting for me. I did. I put the teaching together for me. And, at the risk of it, oh gosh, I don't want someone thinking I'm teaching to them, because I'm not, but it applies to all. So good. Steve or Phyllis?
Yeah, Dan, this is a very timely teaching for us. And what it brought to mind is that, I saw an article, and the article was talking about the NFL referees, and they had been complicit in making wrong calls and all of that. And I'm going like, wow, I can't believe that they're going to fire these guys because they got this wrong. So once I looked into it, I found out that that was not true at all. So today, there's a lot of things that are being put out here, and we have to be careful about what we get behind and what we pass on, because we have a certain amount of influence. And if we have influence, then the people that's listening to us think that what we're saying is true, in which, a lot of times it's not. So we have to be, slow to speak, check these things out, make sure they are factual before we start getting behind it and say, yeah, this is what's going on. And sometimes it's not.
Good word. Good word. That
I
applies.
as I was listening to this, it just made me think about how the spirit is really working in us. We look and we see that we are failing in ways, but y'all, we got a lot to be thankful for, because I know when I examine myself, I know I'm not there, but I know I'm changing. I love the word transformation. You can change and change back. But when it comes to transformation, if it's truly transformation by the Spirit, this will continue until we're out of here. And then those things that we're truly transformed in, we get to a point, it just bothers us. And I think when we're talking right now, I might be able to shoot off at the mouth now, but you know what? I can't do it and be comfortable with it. The Spirit of God is changing us. And the fact that we're seeking His way, and that it bugs us when we goof up, it just shows the faithfulness of God. It really does. And this is such a good teaching, Dan. And such a one that's so practical to kingdom living, not just us knowing about the different things about the kingdom of God, but how it translates into how we live every day. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll close.